16 years in local policing.
Yeah.
There must have been some jobs that you went to that you're able to share with us that stick out.
We were just there to issue some paperwork, a community protection warning to a resident, and lo and behold, we find a county line drug dealer sitting in the living room with 4 golf ball sized lumps of different Class A drugs. He's now in prison. We had an armed robbery once, 2 lads on a moped with a 5-foot sledgehammer, and a few of us in the team went down in our cars and we blocked the roads off. The moped came into my car and they ran and we caught them. Because all of a sudden there could be a massive job somewhere else and you need to go straight over there and help.
And there's that sort of almost spontaneity about it where jobs like that do come out and people are listening on the radio.
A lady walked out into the sea and her husband was watching her and he's going, "That's my wife, that's my wife." You say courage, but I just stood there and thought, I'm going to have to jump in. You don't even think about it, you're just like, right, get your radio and your taser off and whatever else and just jump in and try and get her out of the water. And we did CPR for about 10 minutes and then the ambulance crew turned up. Probably the first one I can think of would be a murder we went to. You turn up at this address and there's someone lying on the floor and it's just horrific. The first time you see that you think, sometimes it does make you wonder why you do it, but then you go to jobs where you see the impact that you doing it has and how it makes things better for some people, and you think, there's always a reason why we do it.
Welcome to More Than the Badge, a Kent Police podcast. My name is Inspector Vinny Waggiani and I will be your host. Today's episode is with Police Constable Lee Godden. Welcome to the podcast, Lee.
Hi, nice to be here.
What inspired you to get into policing and how long have you been a police officer?
I'm going to be perfectly honest, I was never inspired to be a police officer, which might sound weird for someone who's done it for 18 years. My dad always said when I was a kid, because I'm tall, "Oh, you're tall enough to be a police officer, you should join the police." I was like, no. And I'd be running around playing football and going out down the pub with my mates when I was in my 20s and just enjoying myself. And then I got a job at Pfizer, which I still say to people now sort of was the making of me in the way I police, because it was 6 years of working alongside from the cleaners all the way up to worldwide vice presidents and talking to all those different strands of people every day. And you sort of get your people skills from that. And then I met my wife there, who bizarrely I went to junior school with when we were 10. I hadn't seen us from the age of 10 and then 27, 28. And then she already had a couple of little kids when we got together. So I thought I need a career. And I'd seen someone that I worked with do it. And I thought, if he can do it, so can I. And I did. And I also knew someone who was a DI at Thanet, and he sort of helped me with what the job's about, this, that and the other. And he helped me with my application form, but from then I was on my own, and then 18.5 years later I'm still here.
Wow.
Yeah. So I never thought about it, but I'm pretty good at it. If I'm not being big-headed, but I think I'm pretty good at it.
So tell us a bit about your role at the moment.
So I'm CSU in Thanet, so I'm one of the beat officers there. When I first went to CSU, I was part of the task force, and I think at that point it was only Thanet and Medway that had a task force. So we were the multi-agency task force working with the council and other agencies such as training standards and licensing. So I went over to being a beat officer, so I got 2 wards in Margate, or sorry, one in Margate, one in St Peters, but they sort of overlap with each other. And been doing that now since July 23. Quite enjoy it. It's different from patrolling on response. There's no nights.
So what's your typical shift like?
It can vary a lot. I mean, yesterday it was all foot patrol. Last week we had a meeting with council, and then we had to go out and we were just patrolling certain areas because they're a bit of a hot spot, like Westwood Cross shopping area, things like that. So it's difficult to quantify your returns sometimes if they're asking for returns, but you can't really measure how much an officer or 2 being in an area prevents crime. You'll never measure that. So we do a lot of preventative stuff, but there's also things we do still with the council. And there's a lot of work that the housing officers and the ASB team with council do down there. So I work with them quite a lot.
Are you able to share like a community engagement example?
There's a few people that we've had to help the council evict. For example, there's a tower block, and they might be unsocial comings and goings, drug dealing, that sort of stuff, drinking. People that are in flats that shouldn't be in flats, or maybe someone's passed away and someone else is using that flat and we can't get them out. We'll help the council with that. We do our police surgeries every month or every 2 months minimum. So myself and another colleague who's got the wards next to mine that I work with pretty much all the time. Poor lad. We do those together. Generally, we'll do those for a couple of hours.
And what's involved in a police surgery?
So people can just come and talk to us about their problems, like an issue that they don't want to maybe put online or report 999, or they haven't got the contact facilities to get through, just maybe not got the internet, or elderly people that just want to talk face to face, old-fashioned way of policing. And they'll come and see us, and then we'll take details, pass it on to relevant agencies, or work with those agencies, keep in touch with them, and try and alleviate those community impact problems. And then it could lead to as little as issuing a CPW, to eventually maybe getting someone arrested or evicted or anything else further down the line with court cases.
You do some work with like the council, other local authorities and charities. Have you done something collectively?
It's more the town beat officers, to be perfectly honest, that work in the town centres that do a lot of that stuff. We've done operations with training standards and licensing around taxi drivers, whether they're the little things like, have you got a child seat? Are your tyres up to the right specifications? Is your car all in working order? And then also tying in with that, there's a lot of foreign national taxi drivers, so we speak to immigration and work with them as well. Sometimes we do that, sometimes the new neighbourhood task force does that instead. But charity work, there was last year or the year before, there was a football match that was organised. And then last summer as well, there was a thing called the Summer Olympics that our local CSU did with the council. Partly because the Olympics was on as well, I would assume. It was like a couple of hours a day for a week or so, where kids were invited to come along and play certain games and things like that.
Oh, from the Summer Olympics on?
Yeah.
And then you had the football one the
year before, which was a charity thing as well. It was before I started, but it was the same CSU that organised that, before I came along.
So you've been in local policing for quite some time before you moved into the CSU role.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about your time on local policing, what you did.
When I started, I was near the bottom, and there were some really, really good experienced officers. My tutor, who is now my sergeant acting inspector in the CSU. There was another officer who tutored me who was like a 9-5 number. Shotgun, God rest his soul, was an absolute legend. Everyone in Thanet knew him. He was called Shotgun because he had a double barrel surname. I used to crew with him a lot, but he was a 7 number, and he was so well respected in Thanet by the public and anyone on the station as well. To be crewed with him as a new officer, you learn so much so quickly. It was unbelievable. And then as time moves on, they sort of retire, and there's younger, more proactive officers, younger than them, but still been in longer than me, that you crew up with, and you learn new skills, and you take the best from each of those officers. And eventually you end up being your own officer, having picked up all the best bits. And then it evolves, and eventually you become the senior officer on the team, and everyone sort of looks at you, whether they want to or not, for advice or guidance, or they follow your lead. It sort of gave me the ability to... I was never over the top, but if someone absolutely made a big mistake, I could call them out. Sometimes some people need, but then some people need a cuddle or a pat on the back. Everyone's different when they make a mistake or do something well. So I enjoyed it. I really did. And I had some really good skippers as we went through the 16 years of being there. And by the end, I was I don't like the team leader phrase, but a buffer between the PCs and the sergeants, so they could come to me with problems and I would pass it to the team, and vice versa. If someone had an issue on the team, I could go and speak to the skippers, or the best skipper I thought would deal with that. Because some of the skippers hadn't been in as long as me either. So I knew them when they were PC, so you're on a level with them. Yeah, it was nice. It was good.
What's that core thing that you...
Golden hour.
Yeah, that golden hour. Thing that you want officers to have when they're in that local policing?
Confidence in their decision making is the thing, I think. They second guess themselves sometimes, especially the newer officers. They need to be confident in making a decision. If you arrest someone, go to custody, present it properly, and stand by your decision that you think there's necessity to bring them in. If the custody sergeant says no, that's fine. That's up to the custody sergeant. That's his domain. He's in charge. But stand by your decision, take them in. And then things like use of force. Don't think too much about, and taser and parva are different because you have to think about what you're doing. There's certain powers. But when it comes to being in a worst case scenario, a brawl, and you've got no option but to use your hands, just react. Just do what you do naturally to defend yourself, because You're a reasonable person. You're in this job because you're a reasonable person. You're quite intelligent. Whatever you've got to do to protect yourself at that instant, you can justify because you obviously feel you're in fear of harm.
And the demands have changed. So, there was a period where frontline police officers investigated crime, and there wasn't, and there was, and there is, and there isn't now.
They deal with, from what I understand, LPT deal with state crimes, so like your knife incidents, and unless there's a victim, of course, and then your drink drivers, drug drivers, etc., that need interviewing. Then other than that, maybe a little, if they stop someone with a little bit of cannabis, they deal with their own possession crime reports, maybe because it's a nice, easy crime report to deal with. But other than that, they won't have massive jobs like we used to, where you'd have a possession with intent to supply for 3 people, and someone in the LPT was dealing with that and all the evidence and the phone downloads while still taking calls. That's a big old workload back then.
And where does it go now?
Those will go to CID. Any knife crimes with a victim will go to victim-based crime team, unless it fits in the remit of CID or the DA team.
So during your period, 16 years in local policing, there must have been some jobs that you went to that you're able to share with us that stick out.
Yeah. Sometimes you get lucky and you can just come across something out of the blue. So recently, me and a colleague went to an address and we were just there to issue some paperwork, a community protection warning to a resident. And lo and behold, we find a county line drug dealer sitting in the living room with 4 golf ball size lumps of different Class A drugs. He's now in prison. It just happens sometimes. And then other times, I remember one, there was this lad we were looking for, and he'd been outstanding for a year. And then we got a tip-off. Well, not a tip-off. I was being nosy. So we went to an address, and I asked someone who I knew was related to him, do you know where so-and-so is? He went, yeah, he's staying with so-and-so down the road. So we went to that address, 3 of us. And when I mentioned earlier about my sergeants, my inspector being really good, they left us to it. The inspector knew what was going on. He just said, get on with it. I'll leave you alone. You're not going to any more calls. Go and get him. We need him in. And it was a busy weekend. We'd had like 4 night shifts, and I'd already had 7 in custody myself over those 4 nights, and this was the last night shift. And we went to the address. He made off out the back. We didn't realise there was another window. Local CCTV, luckily, were on when they used to be 24 hours. And it was like 4 or 5 in the morning. Followed him to a block of flats, found him outside, and then lost him again. And I had a sort of inkling of where he might have gone. So we followed the trail, and then 2 of us went to the address where I thought he might be, while the other one stayed at the original address. And we found him trying to get out the top floor window. I ran upstairs and dragged him in. Took us a year to find him. And then there's other jobs. We had an armed robbery once. 2 lads on a moped with a 5-foot sledgehammer. And a few of us in the team went down in our cars and we blocked the roads off and we ended up catching them. The moped came into my car and they ran and we caught them. And we found out where they bought the hammer because it had the Wick sticker on it. So we got the CCTV and then buying the hammer, so we knew it was them, and they went to prison as well. You get jobs like that. When teamwork, but also one's on your own. Especially on the LPT, you can go to a call every day and nick someone every day, a domestic or something else. But when you've got that downtime, it's having that nose to spot stuff, find stuff. People breaking into cars, you see them nipping down the alleyway, chase after them, catch them with all.
And they're the exciting ones.
Yeah. And you get everyone else involved, and then that's when the younger ones go, can I be crewed with him? Can I be crewed with him tomorrow? Because we might get something else. And lo and behold, the next night, nothing happened.
Yeah.
It's like that. But yeah, there's been lots of incidents like that, pursuits, taser incidents, fights. It all happens on LPT, especially in places that are busy like Thanet and Medway, obviously, as well.
And I think when you've got the sort of proactive part of policing and the ability to do the proactive part of policing, those jobs come.
Yeah.
And when those jobs come, the whole team almost pull
that's
together
the rewarding
with the
thing
energy,
as well.
the excitement that comes
They hear you call up and go, permission, and they're like, ready to go. And like you've got someone who's good at stinging the wheels, and then you've got someone who's good at listening for the commentary and helping you out. And there's just everyone's got their own skill set. Same as on CSU. New Year's Eve was an example. Just recently, we for the first time in ages, we had 6 in the van for New Year's Eve, and it was our colleague's last shift. So he got his last arrest. There'd been a domestic area that night. The lad had disappeared into the night, and I went to his mum's, and he was supposed to be home at 8 for his curfew, and I said, "Where, he's not home then?" She went, "No, he's out with his brother." "Okay, where's his brother?" "He's at an Airbnb with his girlfriend at a party." "Oh, and he's not with him?" "No." I thought, he is. So lo and behold, 2 hours later, there's a call. There's an Airbnb kicking off. There's loads of people taking drink and drugs, and we rock up and we find the one who was wanted from the domestic hide in the cupboard. It happens, but when you've got a team, you can do that stuff. You can track people down. And you feel safer as well. When someone jumps out of a cupboard swinging at you, you've got enough people there to deal with it.
And is that sort of almost spontaneity about it, where jobs like that do come out and people are listening on the radio, they're mid-lunch,
Yeah.
and they'll just drop their lunch and go.
And that's a skill in itself, because when you work in an area and maybe your radio overlaps with Canterbury, for example, like ours does, you need to listen to where everyone is on LPT. You need to know where all your teammates are. And sometimes you need to know what's going on in Canterbury, because all of a sudden there could be a massive job somewhere else and you need to go straight over there and help. And sometimes there's been instances where you've not even been asked to go, so I'm going to Canterbury. That job's coming our way, we're going to Canterbury. Yeah, you need to pay attention to the radio a lot. And that's a skill in itself, yeah. There's lots of little skills you can pick up from people as you go, but yeah, they're all important.
And how has your sort of career evolved over time to get you where you are now?
When I first joined up, the training was a lot different than it is now. It was almost, you pretty much did your training for a year and a half, almost the whole 2 years of your probation. So you were sort of drip fed into patrol. So you learnt a lot as you went. And then straight out of that year and a half, you did 6 months of what they call IDM, or did call IDM. But we call it Op Damocles, which is like your little detective bit before you went back out on full patrol, learning how to do interviews.
You called it
Damocles, Op Damocles, back in 2007, and then from then it was straight on to section. And I think I did that. I did that from November 2007 until December 2022 on the same team with the same shift pattern for that whole time.
And then now you're in there.
Yeah, and then went from there to CSU. But during that time on section, or LPT as it's called now, tutoring, and then working your way up from like being the bottom of the senior PC, and yeah, people looking up to you.
So how do you manage your work-life balance now, and how did you manage it when you're on response?
Now it's probably easier, but even when I was on response doing like earlys, lates and nights, I think I'm quite lucky that my wife was pretty much, he needs his sleep, leave him to it. And the kids were really good as well. I know some families it's not that simple and you've got commitments, or you might be single parent families, you can't do that. But I was lucky that, yeah, I was just left to sleep when I needed to sleep. And then I'll get up, do a little family bit and go to work. And obviously on our days off, we make the most of it. But now it's a lot easier. There's no nights. It's pretty much you 2 on, 2 off, and then 3 on, 2 off. You always get your weekends off every 2 weeks. You get a weekend off. So there's that as well. And if you need the money, there's opportunities for overtime because you've got those days off and you're not always tired from doing night shifts. So that the work life and the financial benefits of doing a CSU role are a lot greater than being on LPT.
And so what's the support like that you get within
home?
Well, at work, where you're working now?
At work, we've got really good skippers, to be fair. And I've known, being in the job for so long at Thanet, I know all the skippers and the inspector quite well. And then my colleagues, one's just retired. He was the only one that had been in CSU longer than me. He's literally retired. New Year's Eve was his last shift. But everyone else has been in a fair while, so we all look after each other. And when you're stuck with the same officers all the time, it can be difficult. You always think you're going to get on someone's nerves at some point. But we understand that. And when someone's in the family, we just leave them to it. Oh, if they needed talking to, you're all right, what's the matter? Do you want to chat? Yes or no? And if you have a chat, you just sit in the car and talk about it in private or in the office with a group. We're all pretty good. We're all grown-ups.
And you mentioned support at home. What's that?
Yeah, wife's brilliant. We'd share the housework. I love the ironing. Sounds really weird, but I just stand there watching the football doing the ironing. It's just my chance to watch the football with the ironing board on the go while she's cooking a Sunday roast or whatever. And it's like that. Been together long enough now that we know what each of the other's going to do, how the housework's going to go. If I want to talk about work, I will. If I don't want to, she knows I don't have to. She doesn't come to me and say, how's it been? She knows if I want to talk about it, I will.
I was just almost going to see if I can drop off some ironing.
It'll cost
if you love it,
it'll cost you.
How do you manage the more emotional parts of the job?
I'm quite lucky, I think. Never really affected me. Not that I'm aware of, anyway. It may have done, I don't know. But as far as I'm aware, I've never been told, "Oh, you've changed since that happened," or anything like that. Or are you okay since that incident? I've never had to have any counselling or anything like that. This might sound weird, but I've always said to people, I'm not ashamed of it, when I watch films, and if I really get engrossed, I love films, I'll get really engrossed in films, and if it's an emotional film, it just all comes out. And maybe that's my own body, without me knowing it, just getting it all out of my system. I don't know, it's always seemed to happen, but I've never needed trim for anything. It's whether I'm lucky or not.
Other than an emotional film.
Yeah. Yeah. Marley and me, I was gone.
And has there been anything in the job that has stayed with you? So whilst not having an emotional impact, but it's just stayed with you and you're gone.
There was probably the first one I can think of would be a murder we went to, late 2000s, so 2008, 9, maybe 2010, and you turn up at this address and there's someone lying on the floor, and it's just horrific. The first time you see that, you think, that's a bit much. They're not responding. They're gargling on their own blood. And then you go to the hospital that night and you watch them get unplugged and they die in front of you. And their whole body just stops while you're watching. That's quite surreal. But again, it never affected me, bizarrely. And I don't understand why. Maybe it's just the way I'm made. But yeah, that happened twice in about a month. That I watched two people at the hospital just die in front of me while they were unplugged. And you slowly see their heartbeat stop. I'll never forget that, but it's never affected me in a negative way, as far as I'm aware.
And has there been a moment in your career where you've looked back and gone, you've actually started to begin to realise the risks of what you do?
Yeah, there's been a few. I mean, every time we get in a fight, for one, I've got a bite mark on my arm where we turned up double crewed, and the gentleman was not taking his psychosis tablets. He was drunk. He'd already stabbed his mum in the leg, and then me and my colleague ended up having about, 5-10 minute brawl with him. We both got punched in the head numerous times. I've still got the bite mark on my arm where he'd attached so tight that I'm trying to swing my arm off and his head was going with me. Yeah, you think, maybe next time we'll take more. And then bizarrely, 2 nights later, it happened again with the same bloke at the same house, and 5 of us went. And it still took all of us to deal with the situation. And still 2 officers walked out with injuries. You think, sometimes it does make you wonder why you do it, because the amount of injuries that people walk out with sometimes. But then you go to jobs where you see the impact that you doing it has and how it makes things better for some people, and you think, there's always a reason why we do it. Protecting the public, aren't we?
So we looked at the sort of real low parts and the sad parts. Is there a moment where you can share where you've felt really proud of what you've done, or where you've made a real difference to someone's life?
There's lots of jobs we've been to where you think that's a really good job. We've done a good job there. We've got them in custody. They're going to prison, etc., etc. Like you've caught a drug dealer or a county line drug dealer in someone's house, or you've had a pursuit and got the car and the driver and they go to prison with no one getting hurt. There's one I always go back to. I was in Damocles, or IDM as it was then later called, and I was doing my detective role, and you're in your shirt and tie as we were then. And I remember dealing with a young girl there was 2 young girls actually, and I remember having a chat with both of them. And I'd only been in about a year and a half. And I know for a fact that one of them since has gone to prison for carrying guns and drugs for county lines in London, but the other one has now made a career of herself running businesses in London. So one of them paid attention. The other one obviously didn't. You're not going to help everyone, but that, I still think back to 2007, I was still new in, and she's done well from herself. Maybe nothing to do with what I said to her, but she stopped committing crime when I spoke to her. So it must have had something to do with her turnaround and how she's gone on to live her life.
I mean, that's a massive impact.
Yeah.
Just
she was only, 14
life.
at the time,
yeah.
So she's impressionable. And luckily she listened, because a lot of kids at that age don't, because they think they know best. As do my kids.
A proud dad moment. Almost.
Exactly, yeah. And there was another one, absolutely freezing cold morning in October, and bless her, a lady walked out into the sea and her husband was watching her. And the last he saw of her, it was waist height, and then he ran off to the phone box because he didn't have a mobile phone or there was no signal. And we find him, by the time we've got there, he's back on the pier, and he's going, that's my wife. I was like, right, she's floating. So we had to jump in the sea, and we did CPR for about 10 minutes. And then the ambulance crew turned up, got her back to the hospital. Unfortunately, she passed away at the hospital. But yeah, times like that, you think, almost that hero moment. I don't know, is that how you would describe it? Jumping in the sea with all your kit on and dragging the lady out? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the courage element where you do something, even regardless of the dangers that are presented in front of you.
And you say courage, but I just stood there and thought, I'm going to have to jump in. You don't even think about it. You're just like, right, get your radio and your taser off and whatever else and just jump in and try and get her out of the water as quick as you can, because it's freezing cold water as well, let alone how long she'd been in there. But yeah, like I say, unfortunately, she passed away. But yeah.
We're going to sort of take it off the cuff
Go on.
a little bit and just ask a few questions that are just out there.
Yeah.
So when you were a child, what was your dream job?
Dream job? When I was a child, my dream job, probably to play football. I was never good enough to play football. I mean, massive Man United supporter, but I'm never good enough to play football. But yeah, I used to love playing football when I was a kid. I didn't really have any aspirations to do anything like this, or fireman like some kids do, or Formula 1 driver. I just like kicking the ball around the garden. Or cricket. I was really good at cricket. If I'd really stuck to it, I could have maybe done something with cricket, but wasn't to be.
And if you could have a superpower, what would that superpower be?
I want to fly. Definitely want to fly. Get places quicker. I love a good view. You get up high, you can have a good view. Yeah, I'd definitely fly. Superman was my favourite superhero as a kid, so let's fly.
That sounds good. And if you could have a celebrity to join you on a shift, who would it be?
It's changed a few times. There's probably... Can I have three?
Oh, give us your ranking from what it used to be to
it
what
was
it is
Liam
now.
Gallagher, because I'm a massive Oasis fan, have been since I was a teenager. And I thought maybe Roy Keane, that'd be good, because he's my favourite Man United player. But I'm a bit blunt with people, so we don't need two people in the police car being blunt with people. So we go for Michael McIntyre, and he'd just come around and laugh and shake his head like he does with his floppy hair.
I like that one. If there was one thing you wish the public knew about the role of a police officer, what would you want them to know?
I think they need to understand what else is going on, and that, again, we're not just a uniform. Every police officer's got their own personality. They're not robots. They deal with things differently.
We talk about us being human beings, first and foremost, and police officers.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with someone today around that. Your thoughts? Yeah,
they forget that some people will take criticism to heart, especially with social media these days as well. So yeah, we're all human, we're all different. We've all got reactions to different things. I think sometimes the criticism that comes, especially from the media, is probably a little bit unwanted or unwarranted, probably is the word. Because they don't, like I said already, they don't look at the whole picture of what's going on. It's straight on the first bit.
And if you were to give someone some advice about joining policing, what would it be?
Think hard about it, because it's not the job that you probably expect. Because when you join the police, you've never seen what I call the underbelly of society. You're joining the job and you're going to go in houses, you're going to go in places where you think, how do people live like that? And there's always reasons why they live like that. There's so many circumstances why they might be worse off, struggling, etc., or their mental health problems means they can't cope. You just need to be a bit aware of what you're walking into. And also you've got to know how to deal with these people. So just, think hard. But if you do come in, stick to your guns when you make a decision. Stand by what you've been taught and what you think is the right thing to do. And if you do that, you should be absolutely fine.
If you have enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook and LinkedIn, where we will be posting previews of our upcoming episodes. You can watch this episode on our YouTube channel and find out more about the variety of opportunities available by searching Kent Police Careers. See you soon.